Having been around competitive cricket for 20 plus years and being a part of the Indian T20I squad for 12 years, Mahendra Singh Dhoni is talked about a lot, especially when it comes to his accolades in T20 cricket. You either love him or hate him, there is barely any in between. Every time there's discourse around Mahendra Singh Dhoni, the T20 batter, there's a lot of opinions flying around, especially those that he actually is not the best player out there when it comes to T20 cricket. In fact, he's just average. But the real question is this answer so straightforward? Through the course of this video, we're going to try and find out whether or not MS Dhoni is actually a bad T20 batter or if he's just very underrated. But before that, definitely hit the subscribe button, and also here's a trailer from our YouTube membership.
Ganguly in that year when he did get dropped was one of the best batters the Indian team had.
And by 2008, Virat had made his debut. 2007, Rohit had made his debut, and Rohit was fitter that time. From that perspective, then again it comes down to the same very argument, which is Sachin and Sehwag. How do you just drop these legends? You can't. So
Yeah, no one's close to Irfan Pathan. He's the only bowler in this time period to get a 5-wicket also. Pathan did everything right.
I wish we had access to like his bowling speeds and bowling data, which could give a better idea. Whenever we talk about MS Dhoni, we often refer to him as the finisher or someone who comes in into tricky chase situations and is able to take the team home. Even when it comes to T20 cricket, the script is no different. Dhoni is someone who would usually come in around number 5 or number 6 and would help guide the team home and chase down big totals. And so keeping this in mind, you already know the fact that Mahendra Singh Dhoni's role in a team is to be able to finish an innings off. Now, the first thing that any sane person would do is pull up Mahendra Singh Dhoni's T20I stats. In the 85 innings that he's played, he's got a little over 1,600 runs, this at an average of 37 and a strike rate of 126. At a glance, when you look at these numbers, they're not the most impressive, especially if you're someone who's watching T20 cricket in today's day and age. But if you go deeper and look into the context of which these innings have come in, then it starts to make a lot more sense. However, something that immediately stands out is the number of 50s in the 50s column. Dhoni in his entire T20 career has got just 2 50s. This could imply two things. The first being that he's just not there to bat long enough, which means that he's either getting out too soon or he's just getting too little deliveries to face. Or the second and a more outrageous claim that he's simply not good enough for the T20 format. The first thing that you want to look at is the batting positions at which MS Dhoni generally comes to bat. As I also mentioned earlier, he's usually someone who bats at number 5 or number 6. If you look at this data, you'll see that for the majority of his T20 career, this is where he has batted. Surprisingly, or rather logically, this is also the two positions where he has the lowest strike rate amongst all of the other places that he has batted in. This of course is because he has batted a majority of his career here, and so this would reflect a much truer strike rate and representation of his batting ability. However, when you look at number 5 and number 6 and you compare that to his strike rate at number 4, there is a substantial difference. And this is where it's important to firstly get into what his numbers are like at 5 and 6 and why it is that he has a low strike rate here and what the win and loss records are like. All in all, MS Dhoni is batted 58 times either at position 5 or 6 and he has an average of 36. What stands out once again is his strike rate, which is extremely low at just 118. This is lower even than his career strike rate of 126. One final detail from here is to also look at how MS Dhoni fares in the first match innings versus the second match innings. From all the years of watching MS Dhoni, you already know that he is a better chaser, but do the numbers back this? If you look at the overall numbers, you see that in the first innings he averages just about 29, but when you look at the second innings, this number goes up drastically to 53.5. However, there is still not that much of a difference in the strike rates. While batting first, he strikes at just 116, this number goes up only slightly in the second innings to 122. And this is where we'll zoom our lens into MS Dhoni, the T20I chaser. The first thing, and contrary to popular belief, is that this man has more losses than wins when it comes to chases. He's only batted 10 times in 17 matches where India has chased and won the game. Whereas when it comes to chases that have been unsuccessful, MS Dhoni has batted 13 times in 14 games where India has gone on to lose the match. It is also no surprise that when India has done well in a chase and have won the match, MS Dhoni averages 137. Whereas when you look at this in the case of losses, this number comes down substantially to 43. 43, however, is still not a small number, which means that MS is still able to come out and make those runs, but he's just not able to get his team across the line. And this is where we'll dive deeper into the losses to kind of understand whether or not MS Dhoni is the reason that India are losing these games, or he just turns up in situations that are extremely tough to take the team out of. Of these 13 innings, of course, it's not going to be the case that MS Dhoni is able to score runs every time and take his team to victory. And so we looked at the 8 innings where he has scored 25 plus. The common trend you'll see across all of these innings is that he's usually walking in a pressure situation. It's usually when the top order fails, and on average he's walking in at a score of 80 for 4. Not only that, he's usually walking in around the 10th over mark, and at the point he walks in, India is about 100 runs away from the target. Which means that not only is Dhoni coming into a situation where there is a little bit of pressure, and that means he has to conserve his wicket and the batters that bat with him, but he also has to ensure that he goes at a decent strike rate so that India can actually get close to the total. And when you go through each of these scores and scorecards, you'll realize that MS Dhoni in only one match out of these 8 innings has actually been the cause for India to lose. This came against New Zealand at Rajkot in 2017, and he was involved in a partnership with Virat Kohli, who scored 65 of 42 in that game. Even here, I say that Dhoni was the reason that India lost because he could not get himself to accelerate the innings, which meant that there was a lot more pressure on Kohli by the time he got out, and Dhoni just did not have enough support to take the attack on his own. But apart from this, it has always been the situation that either Dhoni's gotten out extremely early or he's been able to take the team from a very tricky situation to at least getting close to the total. Usually how it ends up is that he gets the team really close to the total, but he always runs out of partners. And so from this preliminary investigation, the one thing we can clear out is that Dhoni is good when it comes to chases. It is also no secret that he is the kind of player who is able to take an innings deep and is eventually able to put the bowlers under pressure and take the team home. The strike rate here is probably not as important as a metric, and I say that because whenever Dhoni is coming into a chase, he already has an idea of the kind of runs he needs to score and the pace at which he needs to score these runs. And so when it comes to just the second innings, that is something that we can tend to look past. And so the next question that arises is how good MS Dhoni is in the first batting innings. Does he contribute firstly enough runs and at a high strike rate, and does that translate to an Indian victory? When it comes to the first innings, it's honours even. The wins as well as the losses both stand at 17, which means that Dhoni's contributed to 50-50% of wins and losses when he comes to bat first. While his averages are mostly similar, where in a win his average is 28 and in a loss his average is 30, what really stands out here is the strike rate. In the case where India wins when they are batting first, Dhoni strikes at 139. This number comes down drastically to just 101 in the case that India loses after the first innings of batting. And so like we did in the chasing innings, here too we will look at the matches where India has lost. Of these games, MS Dhoni has been able to score 25 plus on 6 different occasions. Now here it is important to see whether or not these occasions and how Dhoni went about his innings has contributed to India losing. Almost similar to the positions that he walks in while chasing, here too Dhoni is coming in at an average score of 74 for 3 around the 10th over mark. However, unlike in the case of a chase, this time there is no scoreboard pressure, and it shows in how Dhoni shapes up in some of these innings. A trend that we've seen especially towards the later half of Dhoni's career is that he's tended to take a little more time to get his innings going. This is also reflective because in 2 out of the 6 innings, he's gone at a strike rate of less than 100 and remained not out till the end. And so basis these 2 innings, at least something you can say is that if MS Dhoni had gone at a quicker rate here, maybe the outcome of the games could have been different. However, the data is not enough here, and so it is impossible to conclude whether or not Dhoni is directly responsible for these losses, and hence we'll also look at the victories. We'll see that in these cases whether or not Dhoni's actually made a substantial contribution and if that has affected the kind of score that India has eventually got to. And when you look at these innings where India has batted first and won the game, MS Dhoni has batted 17 times. In these 17 times, there have only been 4 occasions where his score has even gone past 20. The reason that his average is inflated is of course because of the fact that he's remained not out a bunch of times, 7 out of the 17 times that he's batted. But even beyond this, it's a lot of times that the situation is such where Dhoni is just coming in for the last few balls, and so his strike rate is also a little bit higher. By no means does this mean that his contribution is any less significant, but it shows that he's not the prime contributor in an innings where India has gone on to make a big score and win the match. And this is where we'll introduce a new concept, something known as the median score and the median strike rate. Now the purpose of bringing in these metrics is to not account for the not outs. The reason we are doing this is to look past just the average. The average can often give us an inflated idea of the kind of scores that MS Dhoni might have, and this, especially because he's a middle order batter, is usually coming in towards the end of the innings and tends to remain not out. A better metric here would be the median score, which tells us what MS Dhoni is likely to score instead of what he might score on average. And this is where, when we come back to the same metric where we were looking at India's wins from the first innings, you will see that Dhoni's score, when calculated in terms of the median, comes up to just 13 in an innings, and his median strike rate during this period is 136, which roughly translates to Dhoni scoring 13 runs in 10 balls every time he comes out to bat in the first innings, where India has gone on to win the match. But when you look at all of these numbers, you might go on and think that Dhoni has actually done a great job for his side, and this is of course true. He has been a really good chaser. He's been able to come in and pinch hit when it comes to the end of a first innings and ensure that India gets to a decent total. Then why is there all this hubbub around his strike rate? This happens because when we compare him to the world, this is where he stands extremely low. When we look at the 15 people who are the top run getters in the period in which Dhoni played at the numbers of 5 and 6, it makes for some insightful observation. As you'll have a look at this graph, the first thing that stands out is MS Dhoni's average. Of all the 15 players on the list, Dhoni has one of the highest averages going around in this period in T20 cricket. But at the same time, you'll see that he has one of the lowest strike rates. And the one thing that might pop up into your mind is that maybe these batters are the ones who came slightly later on, which means that T20 was evolving and they have hence better strike rates. However, this is not the case because there are only 3 batters on this list who even made their T20 debut after 2010. And so when you look at this extended list from world batters, you will see that Dhoni falls short at number 5 and 6. And so another thing we decided to do is also look at his median metrics for his entire career. Here his median score is 16 and his median strike rate is 121. And so in terms of number of runs and how his performance is in each game, this roughly translates to the likeliness of MS Dhoni scoring 16 runs in 13 balls in every T20I game he's played in his career. Now I could end the video here and come to the conclusion that MS is just a good finisher, but he doesn't have a high enough strike rate. However, something that keeps bothering us is his strike rate at number 4 and how he's performed there. In the 12 innings that he's batted at number 4, he averages 51 and strikes at 153.6. This, even for that particular time, seems to be quite the anomaly because you wouldn't usually see batters strike this high. But when you dig deeper here, it makes a lot more sense. These are usually innings where Dhoni's come in at number 4 to kind of finish the innings off when there are 2 to 3 overs left, or when India is extremely close to winning the target and so he just promotes himself up and comes into bat. Here, however, when you look at his median metrics, his median score is 21 and his median strike rate is still up there at 155. And this points me to just a couple of things. It makes sense why Dhoni tends to do better in these situations and also why he's such a good finisher in the ODI format. And whenever there is a certainty around how much target needs to be chased, Dhoni just becomes a lot more better. The implication of his median metrics and his performances through various phases of the game just goes on to show that when Dhoni comes in for a limited period of time and when he knows exactly how much needs to be chased, he's usually able to get the job done and at a strike rate that is required. And realistically, this is all there is to it. It is not a black and white conversation as to whether or not MS Dhoni is a good T20 batter or not. What makes sense is to look at his career in terms of the kind of role that he has to play and how well he's been able to play out that role. Obviously, if you look at his T20 numbers in the IPL, it might be a whole different story. If that's something you want to watch, we very likely will be covering that in our membership, so definitely sign up to our memberships if you haven't already. But the simple conclusion is that MS Dhoni has been an amazing finisher for India and has been able to usually get the job done. It's in longer innings and towards the later parts of his career where he's actually struggled to be able to get a decent strike rate, and this also because of the fact that he has been a slow starter. This has been a video on MS Dhoni and whether or not he is a good T20I batter. If you like this video, definitely leave a comment down below, like it, share this with your friends, most importantly subscribe to our channel. Also hit the hype button so we can push this video out to a lot more people. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.